Hello and welcome along. So today's video is the first time I'm going to do a video on something after the Horus Heresy. So far I've always concentrated on the Horus Heresy or before, which is probably the time period of the 40k universe I actually like the most. But I'm going to branch out and cover a more recent event, which is the Badab War. So we can't talk about the Badab War without talking about the Maelstrom. The Maelstrom is a huge warp rift on the eastern fringes of the galaxy that is not quite as big as the Eye of Terror, but it was the next biggest warp rift that the Imperium found when it started re-exploring the galaxy. And it was an area that was very rich in resources, but full of many of the enemies of humanity. So it was a very dangerous region, unpredictable. Of course, at its heart, it had this rift, which would expand and contract, which would swallow whole worlds, whole systems. Many ships would be lost in the region. It was a home for all of the most dangerous elements of the galaxy that humanity had found, all the various alien species, but also pirates, renegades, in later years, cultists. And of course, it's so big that it's not an area that the Imperium could control or police very easily. It was soon decided by the Emperor that it was more trouble than it was worth and to avoid the region. So he declared that it should be out of bounds. That held until the heresy happened, and obviously the Emperor is incapacitated. Gilliman, on taking over after the heresy, decides that it's such a dangerous region that it needs to be protected against. So once he has the resources, he orders that it be fortified around the periphery to avoid any danger from within coming out and attacking the Imperium. As the years go by, 10,000 of them, so an extremely long period of time goes by before we get to the period where the actual Badab War happens. Humans have started to move more and more around, closer and closer to this fortified rim, and then they're starting to venture inside. There's so much tempting resources within the Maelstrom Zone that they can't help but go in a little bit further, a little bit further. Over the course of these thousands of years, human settlements start to actually be established inside the Maelstrom Zone, to the point where there are three major human worlds that are the centers of the trade network that allows the extraction of resources from the Maelstrom Zone out into the wider Imperium. And these become the key worlds of the Maelstrom Zone. So this is Sigx, Sagan, and Badab. Now these key worlds are heavily populated, heavily garrisoned, and of course the surrounding space is also garrisoned by Imperial forces. And so all was going well. Large amounts of resources were being withdrawn from the region, and everyone was happy until disaster struck. On Sigx, unbeknownst to the Imperial authorities, a large death cult had taken root, and these death cultists rebelled against Imperial rule and started attacking the Imperial military on Sigx. And even worse, they were supported by Chaos Space Marines. Now, these Chaos Space Marines were from a warband known as the Reborn. Doesn't seem to be really any information about them at all, but they were devoted to Chaos Undivided, and they had been around for some time as a thorn in the side of the Imperium. They appeared out of the Maelstrom and started to help these cultists attack the Imperial forces on Sigx. So in turn, a nearby Loyalist Space Marine chapter, the Mantis Warriors, reacted to this and attacked, and they began to try and suppress this rebellion on Sigx. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to, and as things escalated more and more and more, millions and millions of people died, until eventually the Death Cultists managed to get control of the missile system on Sigx and turn it against its own hive cities. This destroyed the cities, brought about a nuclear winter, and essentially made the planet useless to the Imperium. With the fall of such a significant key world in the region, the whole of the northern region of the Maelstrom Zone fell into chaos and were lost to the Imperium. Now, this occurred roughly halfway through the 41st millennium. The response to this terrible event by the Imperial authorities was to announce an Imperial edict to create a force known as the Maelstrom Warders. Now, this was an unusual alliance between four Space Marine chapters that would be responsible for controlling this region, the Maelstrom. And they would be known as the Maelstrom Warders. They would be given other resources, particularly large naval forces, and they would be responsible for taking back control, reinstating order, and suppressing any potential threats in the region. Now, the Mantis Warriors were part of this because they were already in the region. 2 other fleet-based chapters were assigned, which were the Channel Guard and the Lamenters, plus the Astral Claws were given control over this force. They were the senior party within the group of 4, and they would be responsible for managing the other 3 chapters. So the Astral Claws took up residence in a large orbital battle station in the Badab system, where they would base their operations from, and this became their fortress monastery. They then set about, with all these forces they've been given command over, to reclaim the area, and they were actually very successful. Under a series of military actions, they managed to suppress the uprisings in the region, eliminate various Xeno threats, and stabilize the region, leading to enough stability in the region for business as usual to start again. So the resources of the region are being extracted again, things seem settled, everyone's happy again. As far as anyone knows, this whole event is over. Now, unfortunately, things start to go wrong. A few decades in, during a major campaign by the Maelstrom Warders to eliminate some of the threats deep into the Maelstrom, the Imperial authorities decide that the best thing to do is withdraw the Channel Guard without any reason. They just take them away and reassign them to another job. Obviously, this causes a degree of annoyance amongst the other chapters. The Imperium has obviously decided, you don't need 4 whole chapters to do this, everything's going well. Okay, we'll have these people back, use them for something else, you'll be fine on your own. But the Astral Claws in particular, who are responsible for this operation, are very upset by this and really desperately plead for some more help to come back and to replace them. But the Imperial authorities don't give them anyone, and so things start to fall to pieces. So more and more pressure is put upon the remaining Maelstrom Warders, and unfortunately they're hit by several demon incursions, massive pirate activities, and they're forced further and further back off the front foot onto the back foot, and they have to start taking up more and more defensive operations rather than aggressive offensive operations where they were eliminating threats before they became a threat. Now they're just trying to firefight and keep things under control. Then, to make things even worse, the Orcs get involved, and now so a large Orc force strikes deep into the Badab sector. They are pushing the Imperial forces to their limits. The Astral Claws try to fight them off, but their long-serving chapter master, Rovik Blake, is killed in single combat with the Orc war boss, Vorg Manburner. That's a good name, great name for any Orc. And the Astral Claws are forced into retreat. The Astral Claws have to quickly regroup, they have to appoint a new leader, and they, from amongst the chapter, they vote for a new leader, the 3rd company captain. I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's pronounced Luft Huron. Let's just call him Huron, because Luft is a silly name with too many letters. Anyway, so Huron, who will get a much better name later, was appointed chapter master by popular acclaim of his peers. Well, this is great. Everyone's like, no, you're the best. So he's extremely gifted, very tactically adept, a skillful warrior. He's the youngest person in the history of the chapter to ever be chapter master. So everything looks great. And he reorganizes things enough to start getting back on the front foot. He starts to recoup ground. He starts to really pressure the various threats in the region, the pirates, the Orcs, the other Xenos, and he is winning. He's successful. He's taking back control, but he uses tactics that are on the edge of acceptable. He's starting to use a lot of exterminatus class weapons. He's starting to leave planets essentially devoid of all life, using a scorched earth policy wherever he thinks, well, this planet has been an issue in the past, supporting renegades and pirates and so on, and so he just wipes them out. He also starts adopting some of the tactics of the pirate, started to reuse their ships, incorporating them into his fleet. Building up his fleet is a major aspect of his strategy. So whenever he can get new ships in, he will. If he can capture ships and incorporate them into the fleet, this is another way of just building up numbers. And this is successful. His tactics are slightly dubious and perhaps looked down upon by many of the people in the Imperium, but he's getting results, and it gains respect of the military forces in the region, who start to look to him as a natural leader, and of course, as the chapter master of the Astral Claws, it is his position by right to be in control of all of the Maelstrom. Now, at some point, there is a major coup, a rebellion on Badab, and the Astral Claws under Huron intervene and are victorious. They put down this coup, but they also take over control from the leadership of the planet. They essentially, Huron puts himself in charge of the planet and direct rule. And now this is unusual and not a normal way that Space Marines operate in the Imperium. So he directly rules the planet and he executes the old leadership. He starts getting rid of political rivals. He puts in place people that he trusts, people from his own military forces into these positions as well. And he starts unifying the various planetary defense forces under his command and giving them a standardized structure, giving them a standardized leadership, which all comes back to him. And he starts calling them the Tyrant's Legion. These are probably two major red flags if you're the Imperium, that this guy may be on the route down a certain course to rebellion. But anyway, nobody does anything. And he also starts expanding his direct control out around the surrounding systems. So he starts replacing these traditional leaderships, these nobility, these ruling classes, with his own people, expanding his direct control out across the region. So all this time, he keeps petitioning the Imperial leadership for more aid. He wants them to assign more Space Marine chapters, more Imperial fleet, etc., so that he can mount a major campaign against the various enemy forces within the Maelstrom and eliminate it as a threat forever. So to completely conquer it, secure it. And it's a huge region, so this needs huge resources. And although he has done a great job of building up his own resources and developing them and making them much more of a combined, united force, he still needs much more to actually make this successful, his dream of conquering the whole of the Maelstrom successful. He also starts to withhold the gene seed tithe from the Imperium. Normally the Space Marine chapters are supposed to give their gene seed over to the Imperial authorities, or at least a percentage of it, and he isn't doing this. And he's actually keeping it and trying to build up the numbers of his own chapter beyond the regulation 1000. And he succeeds in this. He grows the chapter significantly to maybe 3 or 4 times this number. He also starts taking part in illegal experiments on gene seed to try and speed up the process, try and make it more effective, more efficient. Now, no one really knows about this, but he is doing this, and that is also, and obviously, another step towards rebellion. Now, after a while, it gets to the point where he starts withholding resources from the region. This is a very rich region, and therefore, this is why really the Imperium are willing to take the risks of operating in the region, because they want the resources extracted. And he starts thinking, well, if you won't give me the resources I need to take control or protect this region, I'm not going to give you the resources out of the region that it's producing. And he starts redirecting that into building up his own forces. So he's kind of setting himself up as an independent state within the Imperium. And this is how he starts to imagine the Maelstrom. And in many ways, he has been given this idea from the kind of high level of autonomy that the original Maelstrom Warders were created to have. They were given quite a lot of autonomy when they were created, and he, as the chapter master of the senior chapter within the Maelstrom Warders, is the natural leader of this region. And he feels like, well, I'm responsible for all of this. I know how to best take control and protect this region. If you just give me the resources, I'll do it. But if you're not going to give me the resources, I'm going to take matters into my own hands and build this region up under my control, answering to me as one unified force, and we'll finish this job. We'll take complete control of the Maelstrom. Now, it gets to the point where he's so effective at doing this that the Astral Claws are free to go and help other parts of the Imperium when rebellions occur. So there's a major rebellion called the Quadrant Rebellion in another sector of the galaxy, where several corrupt Imperial governors have rebelled. This has been taken advantage of by various aliens and chaos cultists, etc. And this region's been thrown into disorder. The Imperium needs to take back control, and the Astral Claws under Huron go and join this campaign. And he's so good as a military leader that the other chapters that are there, even though there are some that are more prestigious than his own chapter, the Astral Claws, agree he should be the leader. He should be the war leader, the war master, for want of another term, of this group. And he will, and of course he willingly takes this on, and he, to his credit, does a brilliant job. He masterminds a campaign against the various enemy forces that are arrayed against them, defeats them, takes back control. With, I think it's in about a year, he's got back control of this region. He's eliminated the enemy forces, thrown them out, and the Imperium is stable again. And he goes back to the Maelstrom Zone with his astral claws, with yet more plaudits, more respect from the various military forces that have come into contact with him. Except, unfortunately, the chapter master of the Firehawks, who now develops a distinct hatred for him because for some reason he felt he should have been in charge and he was snubbed by the others, so he held this personally against Huron. Now, for some time, the Maelstrom Zone has been effectively operating as some semi-autonomous region within the Imperium under Huron's control, with a lot of tension between him and the Imperial authorities, as he withholds gene seed tithes and resources, while they refuse to support him with the forces that he deems are required to complete the job. And this builds up and builds up, and this is going on over many decades, over a century even, and yet there's no decisive action from the Imperium against him, but it's all building up, black marks against him that eventually they'll have to take action. Another major Orc invasion occurs during this time, and he is able to meet this invasion and defeat it, and he defeats the Orc war boss in single combat, proving himself to be not just an incredible general, but also an incredible individual fighter, and again gains massive plaudits from those around him, and the people of the Maelstrom owe him so much and are so impressed by him. So it doesn't actually matter that he's maybe taking some extreme actions and maybe he's starting to be too much of a tyrant. It doesn't really bother them because he's protecting them against very real threats, and he is clearly a very naturally gifted individual. Now, although the Imperium has denied him the resources to go and finish his desired campaign to eliminate all of the enemy forces within the Maelstrom, at some point the Black Templars decide they are going to help, and they launch a crusade into the Maelstrom. And so Huron, with the other forces of the Maelstrom Warders, also engage in a major attack on the various aliens and renegades, pirates and corsairs that occupy the region. And together they're very successful. They are claiming worlds that have never been claimed before. They dominating the various Xeno forces, and things are going just how he always hoped they would, and he would be able to take control of the whole region. However, the Imperial authorities intervene again, and they say, no, sorry, it looks like you're about to win. We're going to withdraw the Black Templars. So they take the Black Templars away and send them off to Ultramar to help out there. Now, at this time in the Imperium, there are various major problems going on, and the Imperium is quite stretched. Its military forces are struggling. They're on the kind of borderline of being overcome. So every decision that is made is a decision of, one bad option versus an even worse option. So the Imperial authorities, in their defense, feel like that finishing off the Maelstrom Zone campaign and finally conquering the whole region is just not worth it to allow potentially somewhere like Ultramar to fall, or some other region of the Imperium to collapse. And so they have their reasons. However, from Huron's perspective, he's been thwarted again by the very people he's trying to help. The Imperial authorities have messed it up. They've ruined it just as he was about to gain victory. They've taken away forces which he thinks should have been left with him, and it's all falling to pieces again. And this is building up inside of him to the point where this moment or this time seems to be when he starts to truly fall towards chaos. And so there we have the setting for the beginnings of the Badab War. This is how we got to this point, and how Huron got to be so powerful, how he got to be so resentful of the Imperium, all of the major events, potentially the major mistakes made by the Imperial authorities as Huron went down this path to becoming the monster and the major threat to the Imperium he would become. The Badab War is a really huge event in the Imperium's history, and there are many other players and many other events to talk about in the future, but I'm going to leave it here for now. So this video is really about the seeds being sown for the Badab War to begin, and in a future video I will cover the events of the war itself. Let me know in the comments your sympathies on either side. What do you think could have been done differently to avoid us getting to this point where we're on the brink of another Imperial civil war, effectively? Who's really at fault starting the Badab War? How is Luft Huron supposed to be pronounced? There's too many letters in there. And can you think of an Orc war boss better named than Manburner? I don't think so. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe and share. I will see you next time.